Hello there.
So is Godzilla not going to exist anymore in the Monsterverse? We are going to discuss it in this video in a recent interview that Greg Keyes, the author of Godzilla x Kong novelization, did, talking a little bit about Toho and the debacle they got in with Legendary over the species of Godzilla. So we're going to discuss it in this video. If you guys enjoy my Monsterverse content, consider subscribing, and let's get into it.
The Atomic Fair.
So yeah, like I said, in a recent interview, Greg Keyes, the author of the Godzilla x Kong novel, came out and said that Toho is having an issue with Legendary and their depiction of Godzilla. Now, in the recent movies, Godzilla has always been a species of Titan. There was always multiple Godzillas. There was always a war between an ancient army of Godzillas and an army of Kongs. It was displayed in multiple murals. There was other Godzilla skeletons in Godzilla 2014, and the dead Godzilla skeleton that we saw in Godzilla 2014 was supposed to be Dagon, a Godzilla that was killed by a Muto, where the Muto laid eggs inside Godzilla. So Godzilla has always been a species in the Monsterverse, but up until recently it's never been an issue. But according to Greg Keyes, Legendary has a problem with their depiction of the Godzilla species, and Toho has a major problem with Legendary's depiction. But according to a recent interview with Greg Keyes, Toho has a major problem with Legendary's depiction of Godzilla as a species and does not want that to continue. They want Godzilla to be a lone creature with multiple creatures around him that resemble Godzilla that were not in fact Godzilla. So it creates a huge problem with the Monsterverse and the war that they've already established. And I loved the idea of Godzilla being a species of Titan, where there could have been other versions of Godzilla or possibly a Godzilla Jr. I actually thought the depiction that they had of Godzilla in the Monsterverse as a species was perfect, but I guess the idea of him being a lone creature makes him more of a god-like Titan, and more of a Titan that definitely sits at the top of the food chain in the classification of Titans in the Monsterverse. With Godzilla being a singular Titan, it just creates a whole lot of issues with depictions that they've had in the Monsterverse. So you have Dagon, who was clearly Godzilla, who was clearly a Godzilla. They even showed in Godzilla 2014, and they showed in the Godzilla comics, was killed by a Muto, where this Muto laid eggs inside Godzilla. On top of that, you had depictions of the ancient Titan war being a Godzilla species against a Kong species. So I don't really see why there's such an issue with Godzilla being a species, but I actually do think it's really amazing that Legendary that Legendary and Toho have such a good relationship that Legendary will basically just bow down, and whatever Toho says they have a problem with or don't have a problem with, Legendary will follow suit. It just shows that they actually pay respect to the way the original creators of Godzilla want the character depicted, versus other things that are going on in modern media and modern entertainment and Hollywood, where they're kind of destroying legacies that have been set up for years and years in other franchises. But what this really means for the Monsterverse is that I definitely think that when we see Godzilla Jr., because I am convinced that he is coming to the Monsterverse, and this is something that we can discuss in another video, I actually think there are some credible sources that have come out that are saying Godzilla Jr. is going to pop up in the next Monsterverse film. And I think Hollywood just loves marketable creatures and creatures that could potentially sell a lot of cutesy toys and things like that, and Godzilla Jr. definitely is that. But what I think this means for the future of the Monsterverse is that when we see Godzilla Jr. pop up, Godzilla Jr. is certainly and almost most definitely going to be some sort of clone of Godzilla. Now, this is something that we have already heard in the potential early plot leak of Godzilla x Kong that's most likely fake, but could always potentially be real. I think people give Ian Cassidy less credit than he's due, because I have done my research on this guy and I've gone through his social medias that are available, and there actually is like some slight credibility for this guy that I'm actually going to discuss in another video coming out here in the next week or so. But if Godzilla is a lone creature, then this definitely means that Legendary is going to have to create either Godzilla Jr. as a clone completely, so they actually clone Godzilla from bits of DNA that they can gather from Godzilla and find some way to to clone him altogether, or potentially another option that I have been thinking about is that they create some kind of hybrid Titan or something like that if the governments actually decide to invade Hollow Earth, which is another thing that I think is happening in the next Monsterverse film. They've already kind of discussed it in the novel and how the world governments are getting fed up with the Titans and the Hollow Earth and want to kind of claim it as their own. So I think there could be a Hollow Earth invasion in the next Godzilla Kong movie, or the third Godzilla movie, whatever it ends up being. And I think they could create some kind of hybrid Titan that looks and resembles Godzilla but is not directly Godzilla, maybe similar to Shimo but maybe smaller, a creature that Godzilla could take under his wing. It could be a Godzilla Jr.-esque Titan. I don't really know how I would feel about that. You guys can comment down below, let me know what you would think about that. I don't think that would be a good move. I think their best move is to either have a clone of Godzilla, or for Toho to kind of back off the gears a little bit and let Legendary have some creative freedom here and create other versions of Godzilla, whether it be a Godzilla species or Godzilla Jr. I think it's kind of important for the Monsterverse to continue the lore that they have already kind of set up, where Godzilla is a species, because it's already clearly set up in Godzilla 2014. It gives them the opportunity to actually bring in another Titan like Godzilla Jr. or Manila, or both. And it just gives Legendary the ability to flex their creative muscles a little bit and maybe even bring in Space Godzilla and actually retcon Zozohawa from being Godzilla to being a Space Godzilla or another monstrous like Titan that could be like Godzilla. I think if Toho allows Legendary to go back and have Godzilla remain as a species, I think that would be good for the Monsterverse. Now, another thing that is a major problem with Godzilla not being a species anymore is the way that they set up the fight with Scar King and things like that, the Ancient Titan War in Godzilla X Kong. They've now kind of retconned it, and I noticed it in the movie where they made it sound like Godzilla alone locked away Scar King and won the Ancient Titan War and things like that. But even more than that, where did the Great Apes get their axes from if Godzilla is no longer a species? So there's all these kinds of questions that now come up if Godzilla is not a species in the Monsterverse and there is just multiple creatures that resemble Godzilla but aren't directly Godzilla. I think it also means that Doug was definitely set up to be a subspecies of Godzilla, because if you look at the original Monsterverse concept art, Doug was 100% set up to be something that resembled Godzilla much more than what actually happened in the film. So there's all these kinds of issues with the Monsterverse when Godzilla is no longer a species of Titan. But either way, I think this definitely means in the next Monsterverse movie that we get, Godzilla Jr. is gonna be some kind of clone of Godzilla. So comment down below, let me know what you guys think. And for this video, that's all I got. So until the next one, be safe and stay well. Bye-bye.